Charter Local Edition with your host, Dana Cowley.
Welcome to Charter Local Edition from the Capitol Building in Helena. Today, my interview guest is Scott Sales. He's the president of the Montana Senate. Scott, thank you so much for being here with us.
You bet. It's a pleasure.
We appreciate you taking your time with all you have going on, and I know you're really getting your hands in the thick of what's happening with the budget.
Right. Well, this is the first down cycle we've had since the Great Recession. Montana has been blessed with an abundance of revenue over the years, and this is a little different situation. A lot of times people think that a session actually is better if you have a lot of money to spend. I'm of a little bit different philosophy. I think that we're actually a little better off when we have to tighten our belt and look at what we're doing and see if what we're doing, we're getting as much out of it as we possibly could in terms of the dollars that we spend of the taxpayers. So yeah, it's always a challenge up here, and this one's a little bit different in the sense that we have less revenue to spend.
How much less revenue at the end of the day do you think they'll be when you wrap things up, as you're just anticipating what's
Well, it's really hard to say because everything's on, you're looking out a couple of years. And,
yes.
And so the crystal ball is always a little bit foggy, but it would appear that we're down probably about, $200 to $250 million, somewhere in that range. Mm-hmm. The governor stated that he'd like to have a $300 million ending fund balance. We think that might be a little bit high, probably be more in that $200 million range. So if and we do that, obviously we're going to have to trim government back by roughly $120 million, maybe a little bit more than that. He also has some tax increases, and the Republicans that I represent, we're not in the mood to tax the people that are struggling to make their businesses work and their family budgets too. So we're going to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars and try to live within our means and balance the budget without a tax increase.
Well, you touched on a little bit of that while we have our speculation hats on and talking about how are we using those dollars and not wanting a tax increase. Any areas that you're seeing that you look a little fat, that you think where we could go a little leaner for the people?
Well, government's grown an awful lot in the 14 years I've been involved in the process. When I came in 2003, our general fund was probably about half of what it is now in terms of the dollars that are spent, at least the overall budget. Montana has a high dependency on federal dollars, roughly 40% or higher of our budget are federal dollars. So government's alive and well. It's been growing much faster than the private sector that supports it. So in my opinion, I think we have a lot of areas that we could look at. I think you could easily cut 5% across the board without having a lot of pain. Might be some pain for the bureaucrats and for the administration or the people that actually run things. But I'm confident that we can live within our means without seeing a significant decrease in the services that the Montanans have come to enjoy or participate in.
Well, as we're looking at state to state, if you can make some of those high-level, more shallow cuts, that does seem to lend to things that can be taken out of the budget without cutting jobs. And sometimes if you've got to go more than 5% deep into a department, that's where people lose their jobs, and that's where more pain seems to come along. So,
government should be run more like the private sector that exists out beyond the window there. People in the private sector business make tough decisions all the time, from personnel to what they can pay their employees and even what they pay themselves. So, I think it's a healthy thing from time to time for government to really be more introspective and see what they're doing and see if actually what we're spending our money on is accomplishing the goals that were originally set. Oftentimes, government agencies and programs just get a life of their own, and there really isn't a look back to see whether or not it's accomplished. If you look at like the war on poverty of the Great Society of the early 1960s, we spent in excess of $1 trillion, and guess what? We still have the poor people with us. So I think there's we could have done a much better job of spending that money or not, and letting the private sector grow. I'm one of those individuals that think that the best healthcare program you can have is a good paying job so that you can buy your own healthcare. Mm-hmm. And the more we deprive the private sector of capital that they can use to either hire people, expand their plant, and equipment, those are just less jobs out there, and the more people become dependent on the government. Don't think that's a good thing. So we're hopefully moving in the other direction. At the national level, I have to applaud President Trump for what he's doing. Just this Keystone Pipeline, this could come through Montana if everything goes right. We're talking, hundreds of jobs and millions of dollars worth of income, and also millions of dollars of tax revenue to the state. And with that additional money, we might be able to, down the road, potentially we could be able to cut taxes across the board for all businesses and individuals. So economic development and economic growth is a powerfully good thing for Montana and for the U.S., and I applaud the president for the steps he's taken in the first couple of weeks he's been in office.
Well, while we're talking about the new administration, of course, there's rumblings that the Affordable Health Care Act might be pulled back. How do you think that will impact all of us in Montana?
Well, it's hard to say. We had resisted the Medicaid expansion for the last couple sessions, like in 11 and 13. It did pass in 15, and now it looks like there's major changes coming out of Congress and out of the Trump administration. One of my goals as president of the Senate, the presiding officer, I set the schedule and make the agenda out. And I've been upfront with people that I want to get our work done as quickly as possible so that we can potentially end the session 8 to 10 days early, so that if we have to come back and make changes to healthcare or additional finance funding for like infrastructure from the federal government, that we have the money and we have the time to come back. I think there's a distinct possibility that we'll be back sometime later this year or in 2018 to make adjustments to healthcare or in other areas. So it's hard to say what the end product's going to be out of the government, but we need to be prepared to make changes to accommodate that. And so that's the effort. One of the efforts I'm involved with. It's just making sure we get our work done in a timely fashion.
I have time for one last question.
Sure.
I know as the president of the Senate, you're working for all of the citizens in Montana, but you also represent your district, your constituents. What do you want to accomplish just for them this session?
Well, probably the thing I've heard the most, just individually with constituents calling me, is that they're tired of how much time it takes to get a license renewed, whether it's a commercial driver's license or just an individual driver's license. So I'm working on a bill right now to try to streamline that process, maybe take a look at a pilot project where we could subcontract out some of those functions to like insurance companies, or maybe let the individuals at the schools that do the driver's training for our students issue that first license to the kids. So we're looking at a bunch of different things in conjunction with working with the Attorney General's office to see what's possible. They know they have a problem, and they have some stuff that they're working on too. So anyway, that's it's not a sexy thing, but it's something that people on a daily basis, not everybody on a daily basis, but the DMV is not something that a lot of people have a good taste in their mouth after having to go down there and get their license. So we're going to try to fix that, or at least put the ball in motion, that maybe we can make some changes to that to streamline the process for the citizens out there.
Yeah, those little efficiencies always brighten someone's day.
You bet.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time, and we wish you the very best as you work for the citizens this session.
All right.
And we thank you for watching. I'm Dana Cowley. We're talking to Scott Sales, the Senator, the President of the Montana State Senate, and we appreciate you watching Charter Local Edition.
Charter Local Edition has been an exclusive presentation of Charter Communications. View all episodes at localeditiononline.com.